previously. Back again. Under 1 minute in this video here that I just did, which follows the first one I did tonight. I was talking about having to stay in the live-in caregiver, live-in caregiver's bedroom because they'd hide us. I'm not for certain, but the best I gather, they were taking payments for the kids under the table. And therefore they didn't keep a proper count of the kids. So they'd have to hide some of us from the state inspectors. And part of the time we were in Donna's bedroom, like I say in this video up here, title Watch Please. But then part of the time we were upstairs in the actual residence of the owners. Well, that was the daycare called Tiny Tots, otherwise known as Gilkins. And it was next door to Dr. Proctor, who I just saw a Facebook alert this past week or so that he passed away, crossed over, etc. And as far as I remember, there was never any trouble from that sector, but that they were being creeps and not keeping count of the kids so that they could have more than the state allowed per employee. You know, just like a classroom can't be only so many students. Okay, so that you know where I'm coming from with that. And that was probably all I wanted to catch up on this one. I stopped it pretty close to where that was before I continued listening to the rest of that one to get that straightened out before I moved on. So I am trying here. It's just like kind of difficult for me when I'll skip a little section accidentally, like I had just explained was the case with being in 2 different places. And once again, I wasn't the only kid that happened to. And I don't remember how many of us they put upstairs, but I remember they had poodles. And one of the girls that was also stored up there, I call it warehousing, she later turned out to be a cheerleader at Smith Cotton. I believe she was a varsity cheerleader. And so we all kind of looked up to her as being the oldest. She was 1 or 2 years older than me. And this whole thing just scared me to death. I'm still not the most well-strung person, I guess you'd say. Not proud of it, but I'm trying to tell you the actuality, so I've held it together, though, most of my life. Some of the attacks from back in the 70s, those are what caused the biggest problem with my parents, that I'd come home after being just dogged on all day, and sometimes Dad wasn't in the best moods either, had to deal with the post office, and Mom related to me one time that she several times had to get between my dad and I because she thought we were going to come to blows, which means she thought we were going to start hitting each other. So she got right in the middle of it to keep that from happening. So that's that. And then on to my married life in 1985, where we thought we were doing all right, you know. But obviously, Julie Hardy's marriage is teetotally perfect, and she made herself an example, I guess, and thought that ours wasn't up to her standards, so ours was no good. Which shouldn't be how people view other humans. They have no idea. And see, all this time later, I still haven't forgotten that. You know, that's rude. That was my marriage. It's still my marriage. And I didn't have a cause to talk about it before all this. I didn't need to talk about it. I was comfortable. And after having been abused so much in my childhood, why shouldn't I have gotten to remain comfortable? It doesn't make any sense how they did me. Just like with locks on the doors. That never makes sense either. Your son ran away, so our suggestion is you put locks on the door. Okay, we'll put locks on the door. Then we get a social worker over there, Don Waterfield. He's all like, oh, that's great. That's exactly what you need. This'll work. Then I had to go to sessions anyway and told her everything was going to be fine when she asked me. Said, oh, no, you can't do that. That's illegal. Picked up the phone, called the cops. They wanted to put me in prison for having the locks on my doors that they had told me to put there. So, I mean, there's no pleasing these people. Just like with Julie Hardy. I was a housefrau. I couldn't deal with being a housefrau. Why can't she? Maybe I don't think her life is worth living either. She's, whatever, out flitting around. She's not home taking care of her husband 24/7. Maybe I think that's fit to be uh, ended and ground down to the finite and stomp kicked to the curb. How would she like that? No kidding. I don't think she'd like that either. Therefore, she should realize other people don't like that. She liked to be a big bully with her braces on up until when she was like in her 30s, telling me what I'm not, in her opinion. Please. And it's not the only story I've heard of her either. Mine's not the only complaint. And then there's Marge Harlan. When I opened John's file in 97 after the state told me to come and get it, a paper that Marge had submitted was in that bunch of files. Excuse me. And she had bodaciously drawn a little smiley face on the file that she just said that she had used the technique called flooding on my husband, which is brainwashing, which he had told me about. And then he ended up messing up his family life at that end. When he did what she suggested he do with his stepdaughter, who was also a member of this church, the RLDS church or LDS, I forget now. The one he was a priest at. She was a member with them at that church, and the Crabtree girl. And he said they were at their house swimming pool all the time in the summer, trying to horseplay with him, flirting with him, coming on to him, twitching around the house in their bikini. But you don't see Julie Hardy crawling their back about it, do you? She doesn't get on their back and say, now listen, girls, that's not the way to treat someone. He's trying to get well. He decided to go try to save his marriage by getting some marriage counseling with some old hag that's going to put smiley faces on her paper after she basically tells everybody that she had brainwashed him. So then His stepdaughter, Robin, was dating the judge's son. And she told the judge's son the whole story. And the son, as I understand that the story goes, related that story to the judge. And then John was out of jail. He had gone to jail for that because a highway patrolman had snuck up on him and he turned around and slugged him. They were touching off his PTSD, and you don't do that to veterans. You don't disrespect their space. You don't torment. You don't flirt with disaster around these people. You know, they were trained to react. And when you get them to react, whose fault really is it? It's the people who are triggering them. So, um, that's what they put him in jail for, was whatever Marge Harlan told John to do in her flooding session that she's so proud of in her court paper. And then he was out after like 6 weeks. And I met him fresh out of there. And we became friends. See, we had both been downed by these people so often and furiously, like some kind of freaking virus that these people have in their head to make them think such whacked out things to do. And we took to each other like peas and carrots and had been together just all we could. And as soon as he got his divorce papers signed and showed it to me, we weren't sitting at arm's length then in the back seat of our friend that gave us a ride to Marshall and Knob Noster and Lamont meetings. We were going at it hot and heavy. And that's another thing. I just didn't delve into my sex life because I appreciated my sex life to the point of keeping it my sex life, not Joe Schmo's little sister and all her little giggly two-toothed friends. So that they want to talk about theirs is up to them. I don't really even want to hear it. They don't value theirs. They just want to talk about it like it's some kind of damn, I don't know what, thing it ought to be in the funny papers, is what I think. They wanted to devalue their life, and because they devalue their life, they thought they ought to devalue my life, which is exactly what Witch Julie Hardy did. Wanted to devalue mine is down to the point where hers is just worth nothing and cause us a separation for 2 weeks. And maybe I am on a rampage, but I am drinking coffee. I'm not them again. I have no use for these people. I have enough social anxiety and abuse under my belt from my life that I don't need any more. Getting well of what I already have has proven to be that much of a challenge because they like to block. And I don't appreciate that either. They ought to know it. And I'm tagging these videos with names and zip code and city and state so they can find it. I hope it pops up on their screen and they can really have heart failure, because when John Myers was having heart problems laying over in this hospital or at the one up in Columbia at the VA and on all that heart medicine, not one of them gave 2 cents worth of a crap for him, especially not his daughter. So don't let her tell you that she cares about our veterans. It's not so. Because her uncle got killed, and I think it was maybe her mother's doings, writing crazy letters like she used to write us, and got him all freaked out, and he ended up getting shot. That's what I think. Next video. Thank you.